You are listening to The Memory Keeper by Evan Vaile. Chapter 45.
An hour later, Reece and the Deacon finished up their tour of the factory. "I thought we'd grab the quad bikes from the shed, and then I'll show you the lay of the land," the Deacon yelled over the noise. "We've got 350 acres here. Did Claire tell you that?" "Yes," Reece replied. "All of this," the Deacon continued, waving his hand around the factory, "starts out there, in the soil." Outside, the thick grey thunderclouds hovered above the valley and stretched toward the horizon in all directions. The shed was a large, secure construction a few minutes' walk from the factory. The Deacon and Reece walked through the open roller door and into the shed's shaded interior. It was almost empty, with only a big blue tractor parked to one side, and half a dozen quad bikes lined up, ready and waiting for riders. A long timber workbench displayed a selection of tools. The Deacon stopped at the first quad bike in the queue and turned to Reece. "Claire's a real whiz on one of these things," he stated. "Ever ridden anything like this before?" Reece shook his head. "Don't worry," the Deacon said. "You'll find these suckers a piece of cake to handle. The keys are in the ignition." The vehicle growled to life when Reece turned the key, and then he maneuvered around the shed, doing a few donuts, getting a feel for the handling. The Deacon walked over to the gun safe near the timber bench. He reached inside and withdrew a rifle in one hand. The weapon looked sleek, dark, and dangerous. Then he saddled up, keeping the rifle close to him. Reece eyed the gun warily. "Whenever I head out on the bikes, I take the .44, the Deacon explained. "There are a lot of foxes in the woods surrounding the valley, and every so often they cause problems. If I get the chance for a clear shot, I want my rifle with me." "Fair enough," Reece said. "Ever used a rifle?" the Deacon asked him suddenly. Reece frowned and said, "No." The Deacon held the firearm up proudly, pointing to its individual features as he spoke. Bolt action with 4-shot magazine, stainless steel 26-inch tapered octagon barrel, and ventilated recoil pad. Generates over 1.5 tons of muzzle energy. Will knock a bear off its feet or make a mess of anything else it hits. "Impressive weapon, don't you think?" he asked, his eyes shining. Reece shrugged. The Deacon smirked at him, then gunned the engine and zoomed out of the shed. Reece cranked his accelerator and sped after him, his bike's wheels chewing up the dirt road. The pair soon jumped their bikes off the road and raced across the green grass of the paddocks, heading for the outskirts of the property. The trellises and grapevines blurred past Reece like locomotives whipping through a train station. When Reece turned his head to glance behind him, he saw the house and factory were far behind. Claire was at her uncle's house, listening to the conversation. And the cute little tacker had strawberry ice cream all down her shirt for the rest of the afternoon. Margaret laughed at the conclusion of her tale. Sitting at the kitchen table, Claire downed the tepid remains of her third cup of coffee and placed the cup back on its coaster. Uncle Ray was positioned directly in front of her, nervously picking at the edges of a mysterious black folder that Claire had been silently speculating about for the previous hour. An unnatural silence suddenly settled over the group, and Claire caught a fleeting communion of eyes around the table. The mirth had drained from Uncle Ray's face when he fixed his attention on his niece. "Claire, a little while ago, Harold asked me to check up on Reece Smith's history so we could be sure that he didn't pose a threat to you," he explained carefully. At the mention of Reece's name, Claire shot her mother an angry glance. Cynthia, looking contrite but unyielding, returned her daughter's accusing stare in stony silence. "There's nothing you can tell me that I don't already know," Claire replied icily. Ray silenced her objection with a raised index finger. "We'll see," he declared. "Did you know that his name is not Smith? He lied about that. It's actually Nylander." Claire said nothing. Of course she knew, but she didn't want to get into this argument. Ray nodded to himself, clearly under the impression that he had won round one. He dipped his hand into the folder and produced a single page, then sucked in a breath and fired off the next salvo. "Did Reece tell you about his time in a government prison called the Program?" he asked. She wondered how Ray had managed to find out about that. If he knew, then he might have called the police and told them where Reece was. They might be speeding toward the vineyard now to arrest Reece. She had to warn Reece as soon as possible. "Yes, he did," she said. 3 sets of eyes opened wide in amazement at this revelation. Cynthia's mouth gaped open and shut like a grounded fish, while Detective Ray Rogers seemed at a temporary loss for words. After a few moments, he managed to ask his next question. "What did he tell you?" he asked. Claire paused. "He told me enough," she answered. Ray nodded, his confidence back. "I've got a report here, prepared by someone within the program," he pressed. "It says Reece Nylander is a danger to every God-fearing, law-abiding, well-meaning, free citizen in this country. I want you to read this carefully and understand what it's telling you." Ray passed the page to the young woman. Claire ignored it. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "When you work in the police force for 20 years, you develop a few connections," he said. "This report is real. I haven't invented it. The program, whatever it was real. The government put Reece there because he's dangerous. People a lot smarter than you and me made that decision. Reece is a ticking time bomb, and you don't want to be around him when he explodes." Claire ignored her uncle's comment. "I'm heading back to the valley right now, Mum. You can either come with me, or you can stay here." "Claire, honey, I'm afraid I can't let you leave this house," Cynthia replied quietly. Claire stood and began to back out of the room. "What?" she stammered. "You're going to physically prevent me from leaving? Is that what you're going to do?" Her mother's heavy silence answered the question. "And how are you going to do that exactly? Chain me to the kitchen table?" Ray stood up and began to cautiously approach her. "Claire, please just sit back down at the table," he said quietly. "Don't force me to stop you from leaving." A single quick step separated the young woman from the detective, but neither moved a muscle. Then she spun and ran. 3 steps into the lounge room, she felt Ray's vice-like grip latch onto her upper arms, and she was pulled from her flight and dragged backwards. "God damn it!" she screamed, writhing around in his grasp. "Let go of me!" Claire was twisting and thrashing like a snake with its head caught in a pincer. Suddenly, as Ray tried to manhandle her back into the kitchen, she braced her feet against the doorway and thrust backward, wrenching herself from her uncle's grip as she did so. She watched the next split second of her own life like a spectator watching a sporting event. She readied herself to attack her assailant as she had been taught in the self-defense classes at university. Focusing her anger into the palm of her hand, she drove it into the vulnerable point of Ray's bulbous nose. Once, twice, thrice, thwack, thwack, thwack. Ray staggered back with a dazed expression on his face, one hand protecting his bleeding nose while the other paddled around in the air for balance. Then, with her instinct for self-preservation still at flashpoint, Claire stepped toward her attacker and, like a champion football player kicking a goal from 50 meters out, she delivered a match-winning drop punt straight into Ray's groin. Claire's size 6-foot reshaped Ray's testicles into a leaner, flatter version of their former selves. His eyes rolled into the back of his head, and a moment later he toppled over with a groan. The 3 women in the lounge room sucked in a breath at the same time. Claire's hand fluttered to her mouth. She retreated, looking at the crumpled form of her uncle on the carpet, feeling as shocked as the 2 other women at what she had just done. Ray felt that shock an order of magnitude greater. As the pressure of tears began to press against Claire's eyes, she stepped over the fallen man and grabbed her mother's handbag off the couch. Fishing around inside, she found the car keys and hurried to the front door, then paused and looked back. Her mother was crouching beside Ray, ineffectually trying at the same time to apologize for and assuage his abject pain. Cynthia stared at her fleeing daughter. "Look what you've done," she said. "I can't believe what you've just done." Claire pulled the door open and ran outside. A moment later, Cynthia heard the rumble of the station wagon's engine, followed by the squeal of tires as it tore out of the driveway and sped away. Margaret and Cynthia helped Ray onto the couch, but the soft cushions did nothing to ease the pain in his nether regions or the humiliation of a bulky male police detective being bettered by a girl. When Ray had recovered sufficiently to articulate whole sentences, he beckoned his wife closer and spoke to her in a low, strained voice. "Go to the walk-in robe and bring me the black briefcase beside the shoe rack," he wheezed. "Why?" Margaret asked. Ray coughed. "Just do it." Margaret nodded, then scurried down the hallway and out of sight. Ray's eyes slid towards Cynthia. "I want you to have something with you when you return to the vineyard," he said, managing to sit up straight. "Don't ask me where I got it, and don't tell anyone I've given it to you, not even Harold." Margaret hurried back into the lounge carrying the black briefcase and carefully laid it on her husband's tender lap. Ray thumbed the small gold combination locks open, then lifted the lid and reached inside. He withdrew his hand, and in his grasp was a shiny black snub-nosed revolver. He flipped the cylinder open and checked the gun was loaded. "This is an unregistered handgun," he said. "I'm not meant to have it. You're not meant to have it. I want you to keep it with you, hidden in your handbag for protection, against Nylander." Cynthia swallowed nervously. "I've never used a gun before," she said uncertainly. "All you have to do is point and pull the trigger," he explained. "Don't use it unless you have to. But if you have to, use it." Cynthia accepted the weapon with wide, fearful eyes. It felt cold and excessively heavy in her hands for its compact size. She picked up her handbag where Claire had dropped it and laid the weapon inside. "No more talking," Ray rasped, handing Cynthia his car keys. "Go, now, take our car. I'm sorry I couldn't be of more help." Cynthia took the keys. She and Margaret hugged fiercely, and then, without another word, holding her handbag close to her chest, she departed after Claire.
That is the end of this chapter. To listen to the next chapter on YouTube or to purchase the digital ebook from Amazon, see the links in the description.